The first warning did not arrive with flashing headlines or dramatic announcements. It came in the form of quiet conversations behind the heavy doors of the royal palace, where a handful of senior officials noticed that something had begun to change. Important state papers no longer followed their usual path. Confidential meetings were quietly rescheduled, and decisions that had already been approved suddenly returned with unexpected revisions. At first, everyone believed these were harmless adjustments caused by King Charles' ongoing health challenges. After all, the monarch was facing one of the most difficult periods of his reign, and it was only natural that those closest to him would step forward to help. Yet as the days passed, experienced palace advisors became increasingly uneasy. They had spent decades protecting the constitutional traditions of the British monarchy and knew that even the smallest alteration in official procedure could have serious consequences. What troubled them most was not the king's illness itself, but the growing possibility that unofficial influence was slowly replacing established constitutional authority. The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace became noticeably tense. Trusted staff members quietly compared notes, trying to understand whether these unusual events were isolated incidents or signs of a much deeper institutional problem. None of them wanted to believe that the balance of power inside the palace was beginning to shift. But the evidence placed before them became harder to ignore with every passing day. The concern eventually reached a level where several of the king's most experienced advisors gathered for a confidential discussion away from the usual palace routine. These officials had served the crown through political transitions, family controversies, and national moments of mourning. They understood that their loyalty belonged not to any individual member of the royal family, but to the constitutional institution itself. During their private meeting, they reviewed a growing collection of documents, altered schedules, delayed correspondence, and unusual administrative decisions that seemed increasingly difficult to explain. Some believed these changes were simply the result of officials attempting to reduce pressure on an aging monarch recovering from illness. Others feared something more serious, that informal influence had gradually begun shaping official government business without the king's complete awareness. No one raised their voice, yet the weight of the conversation filled the room with silence. Every advisor understood the enormous responsibility resting on their shoulders. Speaking publicly could damage confidence in the monarchy, while remaining silent might allow confusion to spread even further. After hours of careful discussion, they reached an agonizing conclusion. If the constitutional process could no longer be protected from inside the institution, then stepping away from their positions might become the only honorable course of action. It was not a decision made out of anger or personal disagreement, but from a deep belief that preserving the integrity of the crown sometimes required painful sacrifice. As dawn approached, the palace remained outwardly calm, but behind its historic walls, the future of the institution felt uncertain. The resignation letters prepared by the advisors reflected years of experience, loyalty, and quiet service. Rather than attacking any individual, the letters expressed concern that constitutional procedures must always remain transparent and firmly under the authority of the sovereign alone. When King Charles received the documents later that morning, witnesses described a room filled not with confrontation, but with heavy silence. The king reportedly understood that the resignations represented more than the departure of trusted officials. They reflected fears that confidence in the monarchy's decision-making process was beginning to weaken. The news quickly spread through the palace, prompting urgent discussions about restoring clarity, accountability, and public trust. Senior members of the royal household realized that difficult conversations could no longer be postponed. Whatever had caused the growing uncertainty, the institution itself now faced a defining moment. The coming days would determine whether confidence in the crown could be strengthened once again, or whether deeper divisions would continue to emerge behind the palace walls, placing the stability of the monarchy under unprecedented pressure. As concern quietly spread through the palace, -1 members of the royal household realized that the situation could no longer be managed through private discussions alone. A confidential meeting was arranged inside one of Buckingham Palace's most secure rooms, where only a small number of trusted officials were invited. The atmosphere was unusually tense. No reporters waited outside. No official photographs were taken, and no public statement had yet been prepared. Every person in the room understood that the conversation would shape the monarchy's immediate future. King Charles, though visibly tired, remained determined to hear every concern directly from those who had served the crown for decades. The advisors carefully presented their observations, explaining that recent administrative changes had created uncertainty over how official state business was being handled. They stressed that their concerns were never personal, but entirely constitutional. Their loyalty, they explained, had always been directed toward protecting the institution rather than supporting the preferences of any single individual. The room fell silent as each document was reviewed, revealing a pattern of altered schedules, delayed communications, and revised briefing papers that had gradually unsettled the palace's most experienced officials. Even those who believed every action had been taken with good intentions admitted that public confidence depended on complete transparency. Once doubt entered the system, restoring trust would become far more difficult than preventing confusion in the first place. Prince William listened carefully throughout the discussion, understanding that the monarchy faced one of its most delicate moments in recent memory. As heir to the throne, he appreciated the enormous responsibility carried by every constitutional decision. Rather than reacting emotionally, he encouraged everyone present to focus on facts instead of assumptions. Independent records were examined, timelines compared, and official procedures reviewed step by step. It became increasingly clear that while many actions had likely been motivated by concern for the king's health, several administrative practices had unintentionally created uncertainty about who was responsible for certain decisions. William emphasized that public trust could only survive if every official instruction clearly originated from the sovereign through established constitutional channels. Even during periods of illness, the monarchy depended upon well-defined procedures that prevented confusion and protected both the king and those serving him. The advisors agreed that their resignations had never been intended to embarrass the royal family, but rather to draw attention to weaknesses that require immediate correction before greater damage could occur. Their willingness to step away from prestigious positions demonstrated the seriousness with which they viewed their constitutional responsibilities. No one celebrated the moment. Instead, the room reflected a shared determination to preserve the dignity and stability of the institution above all else. By the conclusion of the meeting, King Charles acknowledged that the palace needed stronger safeguards to ensure complete clarity in the handling of official state business. He expressed gratitude for the honesty shown by his longtime advisors, recognizing that difficult conversations were sometimes necessary to protect the crown's long-term credibility. A series of internal reforms was proposed, including clear documentation of official decisions, improved communication between senior offices, and more transparent procedures whenever the monarch's health affected his daily schedule. Prince William fully supported these recommendations, promising to assist his father whenever required, while respecting the constitutional boundaries of his own role. Although many difficult questions remained unanswered, the meeting ended with a renewed commitment to accountability, professionalism, and the traditions that had guided the British monarchy for generations. Outside the palace, the public remained unaware of the full extent of the internal discussions, but within its historic walls an important lesson had already been learned. Institutions are protected not only by tradition, but by the courage of those willing to defend proper process even during the most challenging moments. The decisions made that day would influence the monarchy's future for years to come, setting the stage for an even more significant chapter as the palace worked to restore confidence, strengthen constitutional safeguards, and prepare for whatever challenges still lay ahead. In the days that followed, the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace slowly began to change. The uncertainty that had dominated private offices and confidential meetings gave way to renewed determination to restore confidence in the institution. Senior officials worked together to review every administrative procedure connected to the king's official duties, ensuring that future decisions would follow clear constitutional channels without misunderstanding or unnecessary delay. The review was not designed to assign blame, but to strengthen the system that had supported the British monarchy for generations. King Charles remained deeply aware that public trust depended not only on tradition, but also on transparency and accountability. Despite the personal difficulties brought on by his health, he made it clear that every official responsibility enacted with the crown must remain firmly within established constitutional practice. Those serving the monarchy welcomed the decision, believing that openness would help prevent similar concerns from arising again. Quietly, confidence began returning to departments that had recently been uncertain about their responsibilities, while communication between palace offices became more structured than ever before. Prince William also accepted a greater share of responsibility during this period, not as a replacement for the sovereign, but as the constitutional heir prepared to assist whenever circumstances required. Palace advisors explained that the strength of the monarchy had always depended upon continuity, careful planning, and respect for long-established procedures. Working closely with experienced officials, William focused on improving coordination between the royal household and government departments while ensuring that every important decision reached the king through proper channels. The reforms reassured many staff members who had feared that uncertainty could eventually affect public confidence in the institution. Gradually, the atmosphere inside the palace became more stable, allowing officials to concentrate once again on serving the crown rather than responding to internal confusion. Even those who had considered leaving their positions acknowledged that meaningful changes were taking place. The difficult conversations of previous weeks had not weakened the monarchy. Instead, they had exposed areas requiring improvement and encouraged a stronger commitment to constitutional responsibility. In many ways, the crisis became an opportunity to reinforce the principles that had guided the institution throughout modern history. As time passed, the palace resumed its familiar rhythm, though the lessons learned during those challenging weeks were never forgotten. King Charles continued carrying out his constitutional duties with renewed support from trusted advisors, while Prince William remained ready to assist whenever necessary in a transparent and officially recognized capacity. The experience reminded everyone inside the royal household that loyalty to the monarchy is demonstrated not through unquestioning agreement, but through dedication to constitutional integrity, honesty, and responsible service. Public confidence gradually recovered as the institution showed a clear commitment to accountability and proper governance. Although historians may continue debating the significance of those difficult days, one conclusion became impossible to ignore. The strength of the British monarchy has always rested on the people willing to protect its principles even during moments of uncertainty. By confronting difficult questions instead of avoiding them, the crown emerged with stronger safeguards, clearer procedures, and a renewed understanding that trust must always be earned through openness and responsible leadership. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and press the notification bell so you never miss our next fascinating royal story. Although the palace gradually returned to normal operations, the events continued to spark discussion among constitutional experts, historians, and royal observers across Britain. Many believed the situation demonstrated how delicate the balance of the modern monarchy had become during periods of illness or national uncertainty. While the king remained the constitutional head of state, experts explained that every official decision required a carefully protected chain of responsibility. Even well-intentioned actions could create confusion if they appeared to bypass established procedures. Newspapers, television commentators, and legal analysts debated whether the palace should introduce stronger safeguards for future generations, ensuring that no uncertainty could ever develop over who was authorized to make decisions in the monarch's name. These conversations extended far beyond Buckingham Palace, reminding the public that the monarchy survives not only through tradition, but also through public confidence in its constitutional integrity. For many citizens, the discussions highlighted an important truth. Institutions remain strong when they are willing to learn from difficult moments instead of ignoring them. Behind palace walls, Senior advisors quietly continued implementing reforms that had been discussed during the confidential meetings. Every official document now followed stricter review procedures before reaching the sovereign, while communication between departments became more transparent and carefully recorded. Prince William remained actively involved in supporting these improvements, working alongside experienced officials rather than replacing them. His role was presented as one of preparation and continuity, ensuring that the monarchy could continue functioning smoothly regardless of future challenges. King Charles also devoted greater attention to balancing his health with his constitutional responsibilities, recognizing that careful planning would allow him to fulfill his duties while protecting both himself and the institution he represented. Staff members who had once worried about growing uncertainty now expressed renewed confidence that clear procedures had restored stability inside the royal household. Although the experience had been emotionally difficult for everyone involved, it ultimately reinforced the importance of honesty, accountability, and cooperation at every level of the monarchy. Looking back, many observers concluded that the greatest lesson from the entire episode was not about conflict, but about responsibility. Every constitutional system depends upon individuals who are willing to protect established principles even when doing so requires difficult conversations and uncomfortable decisions. King Charles, Prince William, and the palace advisors each faced challenges that tested their judgment, loyalty, and commitment to public service. By choosing transparency over silence and constitutional duty over personal convenience, the institution found an opportunity to strengthen itself for the future. The monarchy moved forward with clearer safeguards, stronger communication, and a renewed understanding that trust must always remain at the heart of public service. Whether remembered as a period of uncertainty or a turning point in royal administration, the experience left behind an enduring reminder that leadership is measured not only by authority, but also by the willingness to correct mistakes, protect long-standing traditions, and place the interests of the nation above every personal consideration. Vidiq